Hey everybody, so we are continuing along with our season previews, and today we are talking about the Toronto Maple Leafs. Before we get into the video, I just quickly want to say if you're not yet a subscriber to this channel, to please hit that subscribe button and follow the along for all the great hockey content I'll be putting out this season. And if you enjoy this video, please give it a thumbs up and hit that like button. It really helps out a lot. So, the Toronto Maple Leafs, they've signed Mitch Marner, their last remaining RFA. The team's together at this point. And this is without a doubt a massive, massive season for the Toronto Maple Leafs. Last year, once again, lost in the first round of the playoffs to the Boston Bruins. They have not gotten out of the first round under Mike Babcock. And patience is starting to wear thin. This is a team that continues to be very, very good in the regular season and then unable to perform in the playoffs. And this really, I think, is a do or die year for Toronto. They have got to win something in the playoffs for this year to be considered a success. They've got Matthews signed. They've got Tavares signed. They've got Marner signed. They've got Nylander signed. They got all these guys signed. Now it's time to produce, and it's time to win, and it's time to go deep into the playoffs and do something with this team. And not to mention that, with the exception of Morgan Rielly, every other player on their defense is on an expiring contract this year. So Rielly's signed through next season as well, but everyone else is either a UFA or an RFA in 2020. So they've got to do it this year, or there's going to be major changes made to this team. So let's take a look at the projected lineup here. This is based off of what Cap Friendly has as their depth chart, as well as Daily Faceoff. I look at both of those and kind of base it off what those two websites have. The bottom six, I'm going to say, is pretty wide open as far as who's going to play where. I think the top six is a little more set, where the bottom six, there's a lot of room for roster spots to be won and lost this preseason and training camp. But anyway, here is what I have for their lineup. Top line, Andreas Johnsson, Austin Matthews, and William Nylander. Now, their first two lines are interchangeable, which one you call the top line and which one you call the second line. They're both massive offensive producing lines. They're pretty interchangeable. I just put the Matthews line on there first. Second line, Kasperi Kapanen, John Tavares, and Mitch Marner. Now, note, Zach Hyman is not on here because he's not going to be ready for the start of the season. Neither is Travis Dermott. They are out injured, with injuries still lingering from last season, so they're not going to be ready to start the year, so I don't have them in this lineup. Hyman will take a spot on the left side, either probably on the second or third line when he is ready to return. So top six, is just absolutely remarkable. A ton of offense there. They can score boatloads of goals. Even without Hyman there, Johnsson's a good player. Kapanen had a pretty good year last year, scoring 20 goals and 44 points. Matthews and Tavares, unreal down the middle. Mitch Marner, 90-point guy. William Nylander needs to be better than he was last season, but obviously he had the contract situation go into the season. He missed a lot of time. He missed all of training camp and much of the first part of the season, and we'll just chalk that up to not being there for a lot of that time. So we'll give him if you want, maybe give Nylander a pass on the lack of production last season. He is not going to get a pass this season. He has got to produce this season at a very high level. Now we get to the bottom six. This is a little more up for grabs. Obviously, Nazem Kadri's no longer there. Alexander Kerfoot came over from Colorado in the Kadri deal, so put him on the third line with, I guess, Trevor Moore and Nick Petan would play on the wings, leaving Jason Spezza is now your fourth line center. Spezza's there on a 1-year short-term deal. This is probably his last NHL season. And then I have Kenny Agostino on the left side and Garrett Wilson coming over from Pittsburgh on the right side. I think Garrett Wilson could be a really important add to this team as a fourth liner just because he brings a little bit of toughness, which is something this team has really been lacking the last couple of seasons and certainly has, something they've needed to address. Wilson is a guy who's big, he's physical, and he can drop the gloves if need be. These, especially the wings, I think we're pretty well set down the middle. I think it's going to be Matthews and Tavares are clearly your top two centers. Then Kerfoot will be on the third line and Spezza will be your fourth line center. That's pretty well set. The wings, I think, are completely up for grabs. Moore could play third line, could play fourth line. Agostino might not even get that spot. That could end up going to a younger player or someone from the AHL. Patan, third or fourth line. Wilson, fourth line guy. Maybe makes the everyday lineup, maybe doesn't. I think those are where your spots are really up for grabs. Moving on to the defense, Morgan Rielly is obviously their best defenseman. Tyson Barrie, I really like a lot. I think he's a good addition to this team and that he will help out a lot. So those are your top two defensemen. Meaning your second pair is Jake Muzzin and Cody Ceci. Now, Jake Muzzin is a very good defensive defenseman, very responsible in his own end. That might help Cody Ceci a lot, who is the opposite of that. Cody Ceci's had a horrible plus-minus in his career, and he's looked absolutely lost defensively at times. He can produce points, there's no doubt about that, but he is awful in his own zone. Maybe playing with a guy like Jake Muzzin will help that out a little bit. And Travis Dermott, out injured, not going to be ready for the start of the year. So that leaves Ben Harpur and Justin Holl as your third pair. Definitely improved the defense this offseason. Adding Ceci, adding Barrie, adding Harpur. They definitely have improved the defense. Harpur gives you toughness that they haven't had before. Bringing him and Wilson, I think, definitely addressed the lack of toughness issue that Toronto's been having. Now they've got a forward and a defenseman who are more than capable at playing physically and dropping the gloves when need be. So that's good. Overall, this defense core is much better than what it was last season, and that's been an issue for them the last few years. So I do think they've made those improvements, but like I said earlier in the video, the problem is that all of these defensemen, except for Morgan Rielly, are on expiring contracts this year, and with their cap situation, spending so much money on Matthews, Tavares, Nylander, and Marner, they're not going to be able to keep everybody. There is no way. So that makes this year really important. If they're going to make a run, they need to make a run this season. Freddie Anderson returns in goal with Michael Hutchinson presumably winning the backup job. So that will be the same goaltending duo. And the goaltending really hasn't been a huge issue. Anderson is a good goalie. As far as extra players go, Travis Dermott, when he's ready, will get a top six spot back in this lineup as he's a very good young defenseman. And Martin Marincin looks like he'll probably be an extra defenseman for this team, but if someone goes down, he's likely to step in. Forwards, they still have Freddie Gauthier as an extra forward, so he's somebody who will probably see time this season once injuries start to occur up front. Also, there's some younger players that I've seen on Cap Friendly who are likely to get NHL time this year. Pierre Engvall, who I don't know a whole lot about, and Ilya Mikheyev, who, again, I don't know much about them. They did not play in the NHL last year, but those are guys that Cap Friendly has potentially winning spots in this lineup this preseason. So overall, I mean, this is going to be one of the most dynamic offensive teams in the league. The defense is improved. It's still not great. They don't have a top-tier defense or anything like that, but it is certainly improved over where it was last season. They've added toughness with Garrett Wilson and Ben Harpur. They've addressed a lot of the issues that they had last year, this offseason, and they've been able to keep Matthews, Tavares, Marner, and Nylander all together. So that does come at the expense of depth. There is not a lot of depth here. I mean, you've got players in this lineup and extra players who have very limited NHL experience and are really borderline AHL, NHL guys. There's not a whole lot of depth there because they've spent so much money on those top forwards. However, as far as at least in the regular season, having those top forwards has shown to be enough to make them a powerhouse team in the regular season. It's the playoffs that have been a problem. And assuming these guys stay relatively healthy this year, I think it's going to be another great regular season for the Maple Leafs, and we're going to have to wait and see what they do in the playoffs. But this is without a doubt a very, very, very important year for Toronto. They have got to do something in the postseason this year. Otherwise, I think we could see major changes, like head coaching changes, potentially general manager changes, potentially major players being moved in the offseason. They've got to do something because this team isn't going to be able to stay together for very long. Yes, Matthews, Nylander, Marner, and Tavares will all be together, and they're all locked in on long-term deals. However, they are eating up so much of the team's salary cap space that other guys are going to have to go. And it's going to be difficult to have enough money to put a solid supporting cast around those guys. So I think this is an important year because this defense core is going to look very different after this season. Because Riley will still be there, but they're not going to be able to keep Barrie, Muzzin, and Ceci. There's no way they'll be able to keep all three of them, maybe even only one of them. So that the defense is going to take a hit after this season. So it's a huge year. I can't stress that enough. This is a huge do-or-die season for the Toronto Maple Leafs. And if they make a deep run, great for them. If they don't, there's going to be some major changes, I think. So with that, like, comment, share, subscribe, follow on social media. All those links are down in the description below. If you'd like to further support the channel, the links to our Patreon and merchandise store are down in the description as well. Keep spreading the word about this channel. Let's keep this thing growing. Thank you very much for watching. Hope you enjoyed the video, and I'll talk to you guys soon.